Hi, everybody. Welcome into the Irish NFL show presented by Trust Gaming. It is week 3 of the NFL season. 3 weeks in. I can't believe it. Also presented by Matchbook Betting Exchange, our main betting sponsor, and also a massive thanks to Trust who provide the equipment for this broadcast. Joined by Colin Cronin, Brian O'Leary, Mark Cockerell. Boys, we are 2 weeks away from London. The biggest game of the season, obviously the Falcons against the Jets. But how are we doing 3 weeks in?
Good, yeah, certainly enjoying the Manning brothers on their broadcast. Pat McAfee on there discussing what sort of hat collection Peyton and David Baker would have was one of the most fun parts of the week.
Just combing through these fixtures for week 3. I don't think it's as complicated as last week. I'm sure there'll be some surprises come Monday, even when we're doing our Monday night show. But for me, my God, there's some games here this weekend that just look so clear cut and very different to last weekend. Interesting to see what the picks are tonight.
Yeah. I mean, look, we had overreaction week 1. We have overcorrection week 2. Week 3, like we're into the swing of things now, Michael. We're sorting the men from the boys and figuring out exactly who's who for the 2021 race to Lombardi Trophy.
Absolutely good to have you boys on board again. 3 weeks in, already counting down to London in 2 weeks. Tonight, we are at the Deer's Head in central Belfast. Feel free to come down. We have got both games that are on Sky Sports, the Chargers, the Chiefs, the Rams against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Red Zone's on as well, and we'll be open until around 12 to 1 a.m. for an extended alcohol license in the north, gentlemen. And I can't wait to bring everybody up as well. Mark, I know you're not going to be here, but you'll be here for the next meetup in Belfast. And looking forward to it today, boys. But let's just get straight into the games today. I'm looking forward to it. Before we do that, I guess, does anybody want to give any comments? Obviously, Thursday Night Football. Did anybody stay up and watch it? The Panthers going to 3-0. I may have went to bed when I heard Christian McCaffrey was ruled out for the game.
Well, I I did watch the game, not last night, but I watched the game this morning. And yeah, McCaffrey's gone for a couple of weeks. He's their main player. But if you've watched the first quarter of the game, they weren't using him. They weren't as proactive in using him in the run game or in screen pass as we've seen over the first 2 weeks. It was very evident that they wanted to try to have a balanced offense. And I know I keep banging the drum, but I felt that Sam Darnold, with his best player out of the game, had shown a good maturity last night. He ran for 1 touchdown. Draw play completely filled the Texans, squeak went in at the end. But I just thought the maturity level that he's shown, he was in some difficult situations at times, got the plays off. I know it's the Texans, but for me, the momentum keeps building with this Panthers team. And they go to Dallas next week. And tough game, but they're well capable of winning it now.
Yeah, losing JC Horn, though, to a number of broken bones in his foot is certainly gonna hurt. All of the rookie cornerbacks seem to have really taken to the league like a duck to water. But we're seeing injuries mount up for a number of different teams. Sometimes, we talk about the Ravens, but obviously they did a number on the Chiefs. Despite all those injuries, you never know what way it's going to play out. But certainly, look, for the Panthers sitting 3-0, it's nice that they can put their feet up and look at the rest of the league go at it this weekend.
Yeah, and look, I mean, for me, there were 2 key themes that came out last night. One is Davis Mills' neck could take over the world, if you haven't called up on those memes, but like it is a bit scary. And I think the bit where David Culley put his hands around his neck, the greatest line I saw was, is he choking his neck or his neck attacking his hands? Which was kind of a funny line. But actually, Kevin Clark of The Ringer is a guy we should get on to the show at some point. He's a really great NFL writer. Read his stuff for years. Started this amazing thread about You've all heard of the Ewing effect before, about the idea that a star player leaves a team and suddenly they have an upswing the next year. The Giants famously in 2007, just after Tiki Barber left, win the Super Bowl. And there's numerous examples of like the team should go down, but actually goes up. He cornered an analysis on what has happened to teams after Adam Gase leaves. And he goes back to when he left LSU, they won the national title last year. His school, high school, when he graduated, they won the state championship the next year. And of course, just look what's happened for a couple of his teams, like when he left the Denver Broncos and they went on to win the Super Bowl, like when he left the New York Jets, suddenly they weren't quite as bad as they were. And look what happens when Adam Gase leaves poor old Sam Darnold alone. He suddenly looks like a functioning quarterback again. Look, let's not get carried away. The Panthers will be 3-1 next week, and the Texans are still the worst team in the NFL at the moment, but they're fighting hard. They're playing hard. It wasn't the worst Thursday night football game that we've ever seen. And look, after missing 13 games last year, please get healthy soon, Christian McCaffrey.
It wasn't the worst Thursday night football game I've ever seen. Have you heard what's on next week? The Bengals against the Jaguars next week. Can't wait. It's a big Thursday night game. But then we make up for it next week with Tom Brady's return to the Death Star. Let's look at this week's games. Let's start off as we mean to go on. Game number 1 this Sunday, game on NFL Game Pass today. Washington football team going to Highmark Stadium, Buffalo Bills. Both teams are 1-1. Colin, who have you got in this one?
Bills hoping, obviously, that it's maybe second time lucky. There was so much hype with Bills Mafia going into the season, the return to the stadium, and all a bit underwhelming, obviously, with the Steelers getting the win. They did a number on the Dolphins last week without really playing well, without Josh Allen being spectacular. 6 sacks, 11 QB hits. So look, Heineke is going to come under pressure, absolutely. We're going to be interested to see. Their rushing D has been really good, so we'll see how Gibson does. His yards per carry have been pretty impressive. Can he find a way to keep Washington on the move? I'm also interested, I suppose, seeing Tre'Davious White shadowing Terry McLaurin. I think that will be an interesting one. I just think that this will be a team 2-1-1, but for me, this will be the Bills to go 2-1 at the end of this. I think they'll have enough. And it will be interesting to see if Allen can begin to hit the groove again now that he's back home.
Yeah, Terry McLaurin, 107 yards last week, touchdown, looked the wide receiver that everybody talks about within Washington. But just in terms of the secondary, despite the kind of, I suppose, inconsistency of the Bills' defense last year, I suppose last week was quite comfortable because of the Tua injury, but they haven't given over 75 yards for wide receiver just yet. So will McLaurin have another second effective game 2 weeks in a row? For me, this game is about Stephen Diggs. In his career, for some reason, when he plays Washington, he does really well. You look at the record, I think it's since 1950, Washington player in terms of how many yards they've given to Stephen Diggs, the last player as a wide receiver to catch so many passes. He just seems to do it against them. From his time in Minnesota, his time in Buffalo when they played, he's not gone for over 70 yards so far this season. I think it'll happen on Sunday. The jury for me is still out in the Bills. Last week, game was comfortable. Week 1, we expected a lot more than what we saw. But having watched Washington last week against the Giants, for a defense that everybody says is one of the marquee defenses in the league, the Giants went up and down the field on them. Daniel Jones had a really efficient game. The Chargers did it to a certain extent, but they settled for field goals. Be interested to see how they react. For me, Buffalo would have too much.
Yeah, Michael, you alluded to earlier, unfortunately, I can't join you guys up in Belfast today, which, unfortunately, I'm part of the advance party going to Germany, sussing out some of the stadia for 2022 games and where best we'll play the games in 2022.
You meeting Seabass tomorrow, yeah?
Yeah, I'll knock him up and give him a shout and then, reminisce on that Patriots game. Knocking him up might be a bit dicey and a bit romantic, but still, I will, report.
It's 10
back.
o'clock on a Sunday morning, Mark. It's 10 o'clock.
I know. I'll report back and give you the heads up in relation to it all. But, reminiscing on Germany was making me think about someone who's big in Germany, and someone who's still big in Germany is David Hasselhoff. And why does David Hasselhoff, ring a bell in relation to this game? Well, it's very simple. What do you guys know David Hasselhoff for?
Well, it depends on your age. It depends on the age group, Mark. Night Rider,
exactly. Well, I'm throwing it out there, Brian. What do you know David Hasselhoff for, other than his amazing pop career, including the Freedom song, I think, that was very big in East Germany during the late 80s, early 90s. But go on.
One of my favorite programs as a child growing up, Night Rider, of course.
Yeah. And then, Michael, what do you know David Hasselhoff for?
I met him outside the M Club after the MTV EMA Awards in 2011 with Justin Bieber. They were going to get fish and chips at Bishop's beside Lavery's over the road, which is now closed. And he was built like a proverbial brick house. So I don't know who he is, though. I have no idea. I don't know what Knight Rider is either.
This culture gap is going to be a struggle. A lot of people haven't know him from Baywatch as well. And it struck me, there's Baywatch, there was Murder, She Wrote, there was a few shows. Friends started in 94. That's what this fixture reminds me of. The last time this fixture was as relevant with two teams that had meaningful things to play for between Buffalo and Washington was the early 90s when both were perennial Super Bowl contenders. So we've been 25 years waiting for these two teams to both matter again, either at all or at least at the same time. And Washington, I still maintain, are going to be well in the running for their division, although the Cowboys do look good. And the Bills, of course, as we've said, they're not just in the running for their division, they're in the running to be AFC champions, potentially making the Super Bowl at the end of the year. Look, in terms of the game itself, and my random digression into 1990s, early 90s TV, the point is that this rests on one matchup, which is the Washington D-line against the Bills O-line. If they can't suddenly scare and spook and stop a running game, which showed life last week with Devin Singletary actually performing and stepping up to the mark for a change, which Bills fans have been looking for, if that D-line doesn't cause challenges on that O-line, this game is over. And Josh Allen will pick them apart and they will walk this game. For me, the Bills will have too much talent. They've got too much skill. They've got too many great players. And it has to be the Bills. But that's the matchup. Chase Young and co. step up and win the game for them is what Washington fans should say.
Yeah, going on what Brian said, Stephon Diggs loves playing against Washington. He has 24 catches for 385 yards, about 128 per game, touchdown in 3 career games against Washington. Look, Washington could lose their next 5 games and still challenge for their division. But it's good to see Buffalo finally get more of a flux with their run game. Zach Moss as well had 2 rushing touchdowns last week. I think the Bills will win this 7-14 points, and the Bills are back, baby. I think the Bills will march all the way to the AFC Championship game again. Okay. Before we interlude any points there, it's time to talk about saviors. It's time to talk about messiahs. It's time to talk about Justin Fields and the Chicago Bears going up against the Cleveland Browns at First Energy Stadium. Woof, woof, Colin. Who's winning this game?
Yeah, well, it is. It's Justin Fields' time, though. Matt Nagy going out of his way to say that Dalton is the starter when fit, which released an avalanche of memes this week. You can't say that Fields shone when he had to come in last week, and I imagine for Nagy, he's looking at that offensive line thinking, no matter who he puts back there, it's going to be problematic. For the Bears, they did a good job on Joe Mixon against the Bengals, but Nick Chubb is a difficult proposition today. He is just a phenomenal running back, and that's I think he sets so much in motion for the Browns. Baker Mayfield is league leader with 81.6 completion, and that all comes off of being able to do so much because teams have to game plan for Chubb. Mayfield spreading it out, 10 different pass catchers last week. Landry's on IR. Will we see OBJ? I think the Browns are going to have too much for the Bears. I am really interested to see how Fields does in his first start. And I think that the Bears showed some life on defense with the 3 interceptions. But for me, the Browns are just going to have too much in this one. And Cleveland goes over 500.
I have a funny feeling that all of our picks tonight are going to be full houses because I agree with Colin. I think the Browns are going to win this game. Last week we spoke about records in which their running game was breaking last year, where they had 2 effective running backs going for over 100 yards in the same game. Well, they've scored 7 rushing touchdowns so far this season in 2 games, and no team has done that since 1971. So that's the level they're at in terms of the running game that they have. And for the Bears, despite all the hoopla this week of Justin Fields coming in, I know it's easier to probably start the game as it is to come into a game. He had a 27% passer rating in the game last week against the Bengals. The Bears won 20-17 last week in a game that was comfortable. Score probably doesn't do it justice, but bear in mind they had 4 interceptions on Burrows in the second half. The defense carried him to that game. They had a pick 6. Be interested to see how Fields gets on. I think it's a bit too much for him. And the Bears, strangely enough, are going for 10 wins in a row against the Browns, but I don't see that continuing. I think the Browns will win comfortably.
I was reading a little bit this week, a book, The Course of Positivity by Auguste Comte, who was around in the mid-19th century. And he was a scientist and a sociologist, probably a founding sociologist, about the importance of positivity and how it applied into sciences, including social science. So I'm going to try and channel this thought process and this thought about positivity that I've been reading about all week. And I'm going to be really positive here. And I'm not going to allow anything negative to come into this. So when it comes to the Browns, positivity, they got back on track last week. They still a really dynamic offense. They've got a 2-headed monster at running back. Yes, they might have some challenges, obviously, at wide receiver core at the moment, but the Baker Mayfield still looks like he's on an upward trajectory. All is genuinely good. For the Bears, Cairo Santos hasn't missed a kick yet. Yeah, that's about it. Okay, positivity over. The Browns are going to win this game.
Can I just say, as somebody that edits this show and puts the picks at the bottom of the screen, a full house makes me so happy because it doesn't take another 15 minutes to edit. In 1999, my granny and my family all got in the car and went on a holiday to Bundoran. And if you're not sure, lads, where Bundoran is, it's in County Donegal, and a lot of lads from the north would have went up to Bundoran for the crack on our holidays. Anyway, we stopped after the border, sandwiches in the back seat, cup of tea. I'll not bore you, but we got to the amusements, and I remember only having I spent like my last punts and stuff, and my granny gave me 2p to put in the machines, and it was my last 2p. That was it. In this situation, I'm not Nagy, and the 2p is Justin Fields. It's not going to happen today. Miles Garrett, G.V. Clowney, McKinley, Delpit, Malcolm Smith. Welcome to the NFL. I will hold my hands up live tomorrow night if Justin Fields gets any more than 60 rushing yards, because he'll do a Tim Tebow column. He will do a Tim Tebow. Look at me, I can run. What happened to him? Seriously. He might get 180 passing yards and a touchdown, but he hasn't a chance. And this is going to be a hell of a baptism of fire, because having a guy like Andy Dalton is a good way to have a situation where Justin Fields can go in and out and in and out at certain times and not make it look bad, because when it's bad, it's bad. And my God, Chicago are going to feel it today. I have the Browns winning this by over 20 points.
I would say
lock it away.
They would say if you were to put up an argument as to why the Bears would win, the Browns defense hasn't been all guns blazing in the first 2 games. Albeit, okay, week 1 against the Chiefs, most teams will struggle against the Chiefs. They gave up 21 points to an average Texans offense last week. I mean, the Panthers held them to 7 in Thursday night's game. There's flies in the ointment at the moment. It's not all guns sailing just yet for the Browns defense.
But they have a quarterback that isn't used to the NFL, Brian. Like, Justin Fields is not ready to play in this league. And he will end up throwing passes tonight that basically what will happen is maybe at 6, he'll get a 3rd and 17 and he'll throw the ball 60 yards. And he might, if he's lucky, maybe Jimmy Graham, maybe Allen Robinson's open. But that's the sort of passes Justin Fields will play tonight. And if he can't get it open, Brian, what's he going to do? He's going to run. And then by the 3rd quarter, it gets boring.
He mightn't get to run because their offensive line is struggling so much that he has to run because he's no choice. That's what got him out of the game last week. In fact, if Dalton had been held in the game and not got injured, I wonder how more of it, I suppose, offense they would have had, because they struggled even with a running quarterback. So look, I think we could talk about this game all day long. I think we're all in unison with one another here.
One thing, Michael, though. While Tim Tebow was a truly terrible quarterback in terms of throwing the ball, And at one point, I watched the Broncos lose 7-3 to the Chiefs. He did make the playoffs, where he beat the Steelers in overtime with one of the absolute great walk-off victories in Broncos history. I think the Bears would take that if it meant at least a victory in the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, and can I just add, in fairness, in that comparison, the one thing about Tim Tebow, as you rightly say, Colin, is he couldn't actually throw the ball, which is kind of a necessary prerequisite of being an NFL quarterback. I mean, yes, that playoff game, 316 yards, 31.6 average on completion, and that 80 yards walk-off one to Demaryius Thomas. But in comparison, Justin Fields can throw the ball. I think it's a bigger issue, like Brian alluded to. Like I said, I'm staying positive. But it's Justin Fields versus 4 of the Cleveland Browns defensive line, because effectively the 5 people that are supposed to be blocking for him there just are non-existent, and they won't be there. And that's the thing. 1 into 4 doesn't go. Well, it does. Also, it goes 4 times, but it doesn't.
Also, like again, as I say, I'm not going to pull this out at 10%. I'm going to let it charge, and I'm actually going to let it be ready to use in the future.
Michael, your time isn't reading 10 a.m. on a Sunday morning there.
It's not, but we were talking about last night's Thursday night football game a minute ago. Looking forward to going to Bendoran, boys, for an NFL live show at some point this season. I'll happily do it. We'll make you boys drive to Donegal.
I'll have more than 2p anyway on the trip.
Well, cents now, isn't it? It's about 4 cents now, I think, in a conversion rate. You'll know all about the conversion rate tonight in Belfast, Brian. Baltimore Ravens at the Detroit Lions. Colin?
Yeah, if you're the Lions, right? I suppose what you're looking at is you're looking at a Ravens injury report that has Lamar Jackson as questionable, that has a huge number of people out at the time of recording. Marquise Brown is questionable. Derek Wolfe is out. Brandon Williams is out. Justin Houston is out. Ronnie Stanley is out. The problem is that a lot of the same guys were out. They lost their 3 top running backs. They lost their best cornerback, and they went and they beat the Chiefs. So if you're the Lions, that's an issue. The other issue for the Lions is Jared Goff led the Lions in rushing on Monday night. Jared Goff led the Lions in rushing. That is a disaster. That is the last thing you want to have happening. That is, Peyton was joking about his 40 time when he saw that happening. For the Lions, I think they're also discovering the Goff effect. He rarely throws beyond 10 yards. He never throws beyond 20. It's going to be a long season up in Detroit. Unfortunately, they've had a few. They haven't gone 0-3 to start the season since 2015, but I think that's happening here today because this Ravens side have shown that they've got fortitude, and I think that no matter who is or isn't playing, they will find a way to win.
And to your point, Colin, you're saying he's not throwing the ball over 10, 15 yards. Well, that's kind of consistent with the numbers in terms of who's getting all the receptions, because the most receptions for the team this season is the running backs. 24 total receptions so far. So it's literally dunk the ball off as quickly as you can before he gets absolutely bamboozled or put to the ground. And this defense has just not shown anything this season. They've given up. I know they've gone up against, you could say strong teams in terms of the 49ers and the Packers, but they've given up plus 30 points now for 8 games in a row. It's a consistent issue. It's gone back to last season. It's not going to get any better in this game. And Lamar still hasn't thrown for over 250 yards. That's 16 games in a row. But he won't have to in this game, and you won't have to worry about it because they're going to win this game comfortably. For the Ravens, Murray, that running back who Saints were happy to let go, he's been an effective running back in his career. When he was at the Vikings, he was at the Raiders for a while, and he's still got a little bit left in him. And it's suiting the Ravens now perfectly to have him there because he's got the experience. They're going to win this game comfortably.
Well, Brian wanted to call out, what about the defense of the Browns not being as secure as it might have been? It was a fair call out, but you could say potentially the same about the Ravens. I mean, obviously they have played the Raiders and the Chiefs, but they've given up over 30 points both times. Like, the injuries are taking the toll. The secondary in particular looks vulnerable. And as Colin alluded to, the Lions don't really have much choice but to wear it out, to try and do anything on offense. So the idea that this could be one of those great red zone games with some random comeback being thwarted or being attempted by the Lions in a last ditch, bout of valor, is potentially the case. But to me, it's just doomed like the charge of the Light Brigade. They will throw it, and I just can't see it being enough. The only thing that gives me any pause whatsoever is like, this really is the classical trap game. Like, nobody expected really the Ravens to beat the Chiefs. They came out of that amazing high. Everyone's already said, sure, you'll beat the Lions, worry about the next game. And is there that fear? But frankly, whereas I think we've been all a little bit surprised by David Culley and what a job he's doing in the Texans about, shaping them in some kind of cohesive fashion, the exact opposite, and every fear I fear that we had about the dude in Detroit is proving true. I don't actually think they're a well-coached team to begin with. So, yes, trap game warning lights are going off, but yeah, we'll just disconnect that switch because this isn't a real trap game. Ravens to decimate them.
What else can I say? Decimation. It's the Shane McMahon season for Lamar Jackson. Here comes the money. Here comes the money. Until he gets paid, he'll ball out. This team, no, the Ravens will win. No, I'm not going to talk about it anymore. Impressed with the Ravens, though. Great result for the Ravens last week. Cardinals at the Jaguars. The Jaguars are 3 weeks away from London, baby. I'm excited to see Trevor Lawrence's long Goldilocks in action in Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. And Mark, I'm sure you're excited as well. I mean, me and you got such abundance of hair here. To the action, though. I mean, the Cardinals column are on fire. Is this a contest? Do we need to talk about this? What's your thoughts ahead of this game?
Well, I'll take you back to just last week, though, this time, in a conversation that happened at the end of the Broncos-Jaguars game. Urban Meyer was talking to Vic Fangio and said, a lot of good players in this league. And Fangio chuckled to himself and said, yeah, there are. And Urban said, it's Alabama every week. Oh boy, Urban, if you thought that was Alabama for your first 2 games. The Jags' remaining opponents include the Titans, the Seahawks, the 49ers, the Rams, and today's opponents, the Cardinals. It's a bit like, when I hear things like that, it reminds me of Steven Gerrard complaining after he moved to the MLS that, God, there's a lot of traveling in America. And did you put any thought into this before you actually made the move? Or did you just look at the oodles and oodles of cash that were going to come your way? If I'm the Jags, that is enormously concerning. For the Cards, obviously, look, this is the huge opportunity to start 3-0. It's the first time since 2015. I suppose the interesting thing is talked about no Larry Fitz, but Rondale Moore has been really, really good for them. And obviously Murray is just been fantastic. There are concerns for the Cards in terms of the defensive side of things a little bit. But Chandler Jones, he could feast today. I would have concerns for Trevor Lawrence and the Jags. Cards all day long.
Yeah, Gerrard slipped up there, Colin, didn't he? Oh, no, wait, that was at Anfield against Chelsea. God, that was a great day. Anyway, back to the NFL. The Cardinals, yeah, we talked about them in the division and, a very competitive division and whether they could really challenge the other guys in the division. So far, so good. 70 points after 2 games, over 70 points after 2 games, 650 passing yards in 2 games, and over 200 yards rushing in 2 games. The last 2 teams to do that after 2 games, both won the Super Bowl. I think we're a bit far off the Cardinals winning the Super Bowl, but look, they're definitely going in the right direction this year. And this game is, look, you're talking about these kind of games, Mark, that, just let's not look too far ahead. But surely this one is a gimme. And for the Jags, 17 games in a row now that's they've lost, and they've lost by over 10 points in 10 of 11 games. Can't see anything but a Cards win.
Yeah, the Cards, you could say their defense already in just 2 games is going to be boom or bust this season. Vance Joseph plays an aggressive attacking defense. They were, picked apart by the Vikings last week. Let's not forget, they should have lost that game. Like, how they won it is not necessarily all due to the Cardinals there. But the one that they did, and your record is your record. You need to just, enjoy being 2-0 and move on. Obviously, in the first game of the season, they had an amazing performance by Chandler Jones, embarrassing Taylor Lewan. And maybe Chandler Jones licking his lips at the idea of taking down the first pick in the draft. But if anything ever served to highlight to people why bad teams end up with the first pick in these great quarterbacks, and why it's all about the 53 team members of the team and not one, savior, whether you're a Bears fan or whether you're a Jags fan who can turn everything around. In back-to-back weeks, Trevor Lawrence has been effectively outplayed by Tyrod Taylor and then Teddy Bridgewater. That says a lot about the surrounding talent he has in his organization, and it's definitely not going to improve get up against the dynamic Kyler Murray and the weapons he has on offense in that Cards team. It has to be the Cardinals in this game. The Jags, I thought might make the surprise last week. They certainly started well against the Broncos, but as Colin alludes to, we're talking about coaching. The warning lights I talked about in the last game, the warning lights are definitely flashing, and the emergency exits and all of the life rafts, umbilical cords, whatever you like, might be being pulled on the Jaguars aircraft, ship, whatever analogy you want there, very, very shortly.
Just bear in mind, we keep referring to Trevor Lawrence as this generational quarterback, and we keep comparing him to the likes of Peyton Manning. He's thrown 5 interceptions after 2 games. Peyton Manning had thrown 6 interceptions after 2 games at the start of his career, and people felt that he's going to struggle. So I think it's very early for us to be showing it away on the poor Trevor. I think if he gets a proper head coach there, things may change further down the line.
Or if he was at a different team, maybe him might be standing on the bench watching how offenses actually play in a different league altogether in college football. Don't like that Teddy Bridgewater comment. The Broncos played good last week against the Jaguars. And also, we'll all be sitting in 3 weeks watching them. And who knows, maybe Colin, Brian or Mark might be interviewing Trevor Lawrence after a big win for the Jaguars in London.
Might be kissing him at that stage of the evening.
I'll be stroking his hair. And
I really hope you would. If you're in the press box, I really hope you wouldn't be kissing him. Anywho, I have to give my pick. No, it's obvious what the pick is. The Cardinals are going to win this game. Larry Fitz will be back by Halloween. He came out and said, I don't really feel like playing. Don't know if I'm going to wise up. He'll be back. The game on Sky Sports tonight is the Chargers going to the Chiefs. Shout out to all the Chiefs boys in our heads abroad who are in Newcastle this weekend, expecting a win. We talked to Brendan Daly on Thursday night. I'm not going to say anything bad about the Chiefs, but Colin, this is a must-win game for both sides because potentially 2 of their biggest rivals could go 3-0 in the AFC West.
Yeah, but I suppose the interesting thing is both of these teams could be 2-0 rather than 1-1, and kind of both beat themselves, really, I feel, last weekend. When you look at the QBs with the most passing yards, the AFC West has numbers 1, 3, and 4, and it's 3 and 4 going up against each other. With Mahomes and Justin Herbert. So when we talk about QBs needing time to sit on the sidelines and hold a clipboard, Justin Herbert has never played a preseason game. Doesn't seem to be having any impact on him. I do think the Chargers they haven't been that explosive. I think trying to install a new offense, it's not really there as yet. And the penalties last week were just ridiculous, like 12. Mahomes was excellent for the most part against the Ravens, other than a ridiculous interception where he just threw the ball up. And for the issue I think teams have is the Ravens did really well. They took Tyreek Hill out of the game, then Kelsey goes off. So what talk about pick your poison. I think the Chiefs have a lot of work to do in terms of the run, and I have no doubt that they will have been scheming for trying to do that. The Chiefs have big injury concerns, though. Chris Jones and Frank Clark, both questionable for the game today. For the Chargers, both Bosa and Chris Harris Jr. are questionable. So you're looking at issues for both. This is actually a game. I know there are lots of games this week where it's obvious, but I really could see this going either way. It would not surprise me if Justin Herbert went in and got a win at Arrowhead. But I think that the Chiefs will have gotten, a kind of a wake-up call against the Ravens, and at home, I fancy them to go to 2-1 on the season, just edging it out against a Chargers team that are still looking for their real identity under their new head coach.
I see this game as kind of a statement game, and I see it from both sides of the coin. I mean, the Chiefs haven't had a difficult defeat last weekend. As you said, they kind of threw that game away. They should be going for 3-0. They need to rebound quickly. And for the Chargers, last weekend was the Chargers that were old. They found ways to lose. There was people arguing this week about poor refereeing decisions. Fair enough. But this is what we've seen from the Chargers for years. And coming into this season, we felt that they'd moved on from that. They were in all these close games last year. They lost by field goals, lost in overtime. But with a new head coach, that would all be eradicated. They found ways to lose last weekend. For me, it's still the Chargers of old. So they need to put a marker down if they want to win this division. And we're better to do it than go into Arrowhead. For me, this game comes down to Kelsey against Derwin James. 6 times they faced each other. In the 3 games which Derwin James has played, he's held Kelsey to 90 yards, no touchdowns, consistently across those 3 games. Where he hasn't been involved, he's been out for injury. Kelsey's gone for over 100 yards in all 3 games and scored a touchdown in each game. That's the pivotal point for me. Does Kelsey, he touched on, Tyreek Hill, but for me, you saw the touchdown Kelsey scored last week. That was a tight end scoring a wide receiver's touchdown. He's a phenomenal player. They need to hold him, take him out of the game, and then hopefully then they can do a job in the secondary. For me, it's still too much. It's too early for this Chargers team. I think the Chiefs will rebound and win.
Yeah, I mean, Colin alluded to it. Last week, the Chargers killed themselves. Like red zone turnovers, really costly penalties at the wrong time. It was a good game. Don't get me wrong, against the Cowboys. There was a lot of quality from both sides, and it was a good tight game. But the Chargers threw away one they should have had. And we've been saying this before. I made the joke about the Poseidon curse, effectively, against them being akin to Odysseus in terms of their special teams play, but equally, like even last season with Justin Herbert, they were there on the goal line. I think it was the Browns game, was it? And they suddenly tried to run a sneak play. Well, everyone tried to run a sneak play except for the entire O-line that dropped back into pass protection with only about 20 seconds left in the game, and they ran out of clock. Like they find these bizarre, I don't want to say wonderful ways, bizarre ways to lose games. I've alluded to Young-Hoo Koo. Couldn't hit a backside of a barn door when he was with the Chargers. He goes to the Falcons. He's a bloody Pro Bowl kicker. So they need to turn the leaf, and they need to prove they're not cursed. But they are going up against a team this week, let's remember, who are last in the league in defense in yards allowed, 469 yards per game. And okay, we're only talking about a small sample size of only 2 games. But that defense is not in any way shaped to complement that offense just about yet. And you can say that about a few teams. We mentioned the Browns earlier. The Bucs defense doesn't look too hot at the moment either. So can it evolve? Of course it can. But they will not be appreciative about going up against a really hot offense with Justin Herbert and that Chargers team. Austin Eckler bounced back and looked, healthy, which was good last week. So where does this boil down to? Chris Harris actually is out, and if he was playing, I'd feel a little bit better about this. And Joey Bosa hasn't practiced all week. But okay, if I make one slight conditional element, if Joey Bosa plays, the Chargers will find a way and give the Chiefs their first back-to-back losses since weeks 5 and 6 of the 2019 season. I don't feel very good about it. I feel like I should really take a shower because I feel a little bit unclean about it. But I think this is the week the Chargers do make that statement. They do find a way, and they drop the Chiefs to 1 and 2.
The Honey Badger has got 2 interceptions, and that's really good because he missed week 1 and he was clearly a good factor for the Chiefs against the Ravens in week 2. Both teams 1-1, massive game for both teams because it looks as if potentially the 2 other teams in the AFC West could potentially, may not happen, they could potentially go 3-0 this season so far. Look, the reality is the Chiefs have conceded 29 points week 1, 36 points week 2. You take the logo away, you take Patrick Mahomes away. This team's got issues, whether we want to say it or not. They got lucky against Cleveland. They shouldn't have beat the Browns as far as I'm concerned. And Cleveland beat themselves week 1. But you can forget that and forgive that and look ahead to week 2 because the Chiefs won in week 2, didn't they? Against no, they didn't.
You could reverse it the exact same way and say that the Chiefs blew it last week. So
if your ma was your da, look,
same point.
Really like Brandon Staley in Los Angeles. There's no other way about it. I was on the road back up from Dublin last week and I was listening / maybe watching the odd time, legally. That Cowboys game, far too many penalties. But I liked the way that Justin Herbert moved the ball on occasions, not the 2 interceptions, but I like that offense. I think it's got massive potential. And, I don't think it's coming too early. I agree with Mark. I think Joey Bosa could be key in this game, but also that combination of Allen and Mike Williams in the wide receiver core. I think, and I said it on the season preview show, I said it on numerous other shows, this is the year that the Chargers have to make a statement. The Chargers cannot lose a game like this, especially if the Broncos or Raiders go 3-0, and especially against a divisional rival. I think they have. I think they have the talent. I think Kansas City will fall to 4th place in the AFC West and go 0-1 against a division rival. And who knows, maybe Patty Mahomes will prove me wrong once again, but he hasn't in 18 months. So I'm not going to say anymore. I like the Chargers. I think the Chargers will go to Arrowhead, and I think I think they'll win by a field goal. And if that happens, a conversation will have to be had about the Chiefs and about the Chiefs season, because in 2 weeks' time, baby, Sunday Night Football, they're going up against the Buffalo Bills. Yeah.
Michael, I just wanted to check if your ma was your dad.
You'd be your
sister.
Is that
a commonly used expression in Tyrone?
It must be used in the North. I don't know. If your ma was your dad, I'd be your sister. No, never.
I've heard that many a time, Michael, in fairness.
Thank you. I know there's a bit of a generational gap mark between us, but it's gone. Anywho, from talking from generational gaps, there's a team that used to be good. The Patriots are going up against the Saints. Do you like that one? No. Okay. Anyway, sorry. They're both 1-1. Hold on. So it's the Saints at the Patriots. I was going to say, I actually read it the wrong way around. I thought, why are the Saints playing a home game at Gillette? I thought the whole thing with the Hurricane. What's going on with the Hurricane, Colin? Like, are they going to play Jacksonville or Dallas next week, or what's the plan there?
Well, there's still lots to be sorted, because there've been I think Brian O'Leary, fastest finger on the buzzer.
They're at home next week in the Dome. You know how I know that? Because they're playing the Giants, and you think we find a way to make sure we're not going to the Dome. No, they're returning next week. There was smoke coming out of the Dome this week. They found a way to fix it. They're playing at home next week.
There's a new Pope to replace Drew Brees. No, too soon.
Too soon. Judging by what we saw last week, it's too soon.
You got the hair done as well. Do you see it, Colin? Do you see you got the hair done? I was watching the Notre Dame game, Notre Dame, on Sky Sports last week, and he has the hair done. He looks the bee's knees alongside Mike Tirico, who I met in Port Rush 2 years ago. Different story, different time. Go for it, Colin.
Well, they might want to get Drew Brees to form a search party, because Alvin Kamara was harder to find last week than Mark. What a disaster. What 5 yards? I mean, it was crazy. And a guy who sets the tone, but they had 128 total yards of offense. it's the lowest in the Sean Payton era. I mean, it was just horrific to watch. It was Tebow era Broncos, which the Saints aren't used to. And Jameis got sacked 4 times, hit 11 times, threw 2 interceptions. They went 2 of 11 on 3rd down. Just an awful day. And now you've got to go to Foxborough to face Bill Belichick, who loves destroying, quarterbacks. So it's a tough one to go. I mean, the Patriots gave up a ton of rushing yards against the Jets. So you think that it could be a bounce back game for Kamara. But I do think this is a Saints team in transition. And again, I expect Belichick to scheme and find a way. And the Empire goes back above 500 because they will just have Mac Jones do what he needs to do. They're not going to ask him to do anything crazy. And I reckon that will be enough. But there'll be, this will be a game where we could see, a couple of trick plays because both Sean Payton and Bill Belichick, like a little bit of gamesmanship. Don't always like when it's used against them. We saw Bill when Mike Vrabel did it with the Titans, but that might be one thing to keep an eye on in this. But yeah, Patriots for me.
Michael, when you said he looked the bee's knees, you probably should have said he looked the breeze knees. That would have been more, suitable to the situation. You're talking about this Saints offense last week. Everybody was hoopla after week 1, how effective they were against the Packers. Sean Payton's only had 6 games in his career as head coach of the Saints where they've only scored less than 10 points. The following week, those 6 games, they scored over 30 points. That's not going to happen this week because this Patriots defense, for me, is very underrated. We saw 4 interceptions last weekend. I think when you have a look back at some of the plays, I think there was a few that were more on the wide receivers at times than on the quarterback, and he's a rookie. But you're going up against the turnover machine. And we touched on it after week 1, how effective he is in week 2. He only threw 2 interceptions last week, but by golly, did he get destroyed by that Panthers defense. For me, it's a nice, comfortable game for Mac Jones. Again, he's going to ease into it. I don't think the Saints are going to win. I think the Patriots are going to win comfortably. But strangely enough, our friends at matchbook.com this morning updated us on where the money is going this week. And they said that 90% of the bets this week have gone on the Saints. It's the highest betting punt they've had. All the money so far has been on the Saints. Saints are +3, not favorites, and they've had a significant amount of money come in, which I found a little bit surprising. But for me, taking away the betting aspect, I think it's a Patriots win.
I'd love to have the confidence of the 2 boys and be really cocky and kind of play the Star Wars theme tune about the evil empire. Dan, 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 Dan.
Hold on. I actually have something written down here. Can I just bring this? Is perfect timing. I was gonna say Mac Jones is like the Peter Crouch of the NFL but he's actually the C-3PO. Oh, here's a 5-yard pass, sir. Oh, that's great. Oh, hold on, I'm only 24. Sorry, Mark.
Michael, I forgive you. I mean, you're a fan of the Denver Broncos. You haven't seen functioning quarterback play for so many years. It must come as an unfamiliar sight. So, the reality is Jones still has a long way to go as a rookie. This almost reminds me of, was it Gotcha featuring Kimbra? Somebody that I used to know was the song. I mean, for the first time in about 20 years, like fans won't look at this fixture with any kind of neutrals, with any kind of recollection. Like there's no Breeze, there's no Brady. Like this is, Pat's Saints, but not as we know it, Jim. So a couple of flaws in the overconfidence, I'd say, on the Patriots. Patriots O-line doesn't look very good and solid at the moment. Patriots D-line equally isn't great. I can actually see a bounce back game for Alvin Kamara because the run fits haven't been fantastic on the Patriots side. But I do see this as really a game against strength versus strength. The Saints run defense, and Pats will want to run predominantly with Damian Harris, etc., and the short passing game. But their run defense has been impressive so far. And of course, when the Saints want to air it out with the turnover machine, the Pats' pass defense has been enjoying some time. And yes, they very much enjoyed Zach Wilson last week. For me, I do think the Patriots have enough, mainly because I don't trust Jameis Winston to tell me what way is left and what way is right, to be fairness. I mean, he probably was told, but he also probably forgot what he was preparing for, if you remember his infamous week 1 interview. So on balance, I'm with the Pats. I'm going for the Pats in this game, but there are flaws. There are definitely flaws.
There's flaws. We stood in Dublin last week watching the Pats score 25 points against an under 14 minor girls team. Come on. They won 25-6 against the Jets. Are you taking a hand? Like, they got beat against Miami week 1. They're nowhere near good enough. Mac Jones is not the answer for this team. And we can sit here and we can say, if it was any other team, any other coach, we'd all be chatting away going, he's mad. He's mad bringing in Mac Jones. The reality is you got the whole stigmatism there with Bill Belichick, Robert Kraft, the Patriots, the next generational quarterback, C3PO, blah, 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 blah. I think Alvin Kamara will come back. It's almost like Nigella Lawson halftime in Norwich against Liverpool. Where are you? Where are you? Let's be having you. I think Kamara will have a great game today. And I think the Saints will score over 24 points. And I think that'll be enough to win the game. I don't think Mac Jones will do enough. And he may blossom into a functioning quarterback. I think that will be his ceiling. And he's not there yet for me. I'm yet to be converted or reformed. But who knows? Maybe it'll be in the future. I just don't get it. But yeah, I'm going to pick the Saints. Grant over. Sorry, Mark. That's a bit personal, isn't it? Oh, and also, Colin, I wrote this down. There was nothing wrong with the Tebow-led Broncos. Why? This is the third time tonight we've had this discussion. There was nothing wrong with it. It was good crack. We beat Pittsburgh. It was good crack. It was good fun. Remember?
That game.
I know the week after was a disaster, but let's not talk about that.
Yeah. I mean, that week after, the Patriots beat was like a under 14 girls team that they ended up beating.
I remember going to that quarter 2 because I think we got 20 minutes when we knew the game was over. Let's just wrap it up now.
Okay.
Right. Losing 45-10 to the Lions. That's one that comes to mind from the Tebow era. That was a good one.
He can run, and he has such heart, and he seems like a nice guy.
Actually, Michael, one thing I always loved about the Tebow era was the way in which he kind of wanted to play the game like everything was constantly on the NFL quick synopsis pieces, because the first 3 quarters of the game, like the first 45 minutes, he was like, no, we don't really want to play. We just want to, we'll just play for the last 15 minutes. Is that all right?
It reminds me of the dog in the road. If you leave the gate open, he'll run out and get knocked down by the oncoming car. Bloody hell, what an atrocious quarterback he was.
But he was a nice man, a guy that had a lot of faith.
He's not dead yet, lads. He was.
Wait, I've got a good interlude here. You got to hear it. Brian, I want to see your face here. It's a good man with good faith and enjoys a good prayer, and 2 teams that really don't have a prayer at the minute. The Atlanta Falcons going to New York. They play the New York Giants. Both teams are 0-2. Colin, who have you got this week? I'm really sorry. I'm not sorry. It's good.
Look, I suppose the thing here is again we talk about rookies making a difference. Having Kyle Pitts makes a huge difference for the Falcons, averaging 5.3 yards per play when he's on the field, 2.61 when he's not. Longest completion without him is 8 yards. They have 26 plays for 9 or more yards when Pitts is on the field. He makes unbelievable catches. He led the team in receiving yards last week, and yet they appear to, have him like stashed away half the time, which, doesn't make a lot of sense to me. This for the Giants and for Brian, you really couldn't have asked for unless it was the Jets, but I guess that there's a bit of rivalry there. To be playing the Falcons where they are now, it's a nice one to have. They're a team that doesn't have a single interception. They're a team where Matt Ryan just is struggling. He tends to throw it short because he's worried about the protection. Daniel Jones had the best game of his career against the Washington football team. And the Giants appear to be taking a leaf out of the Broncos book from the past few years in terms of relying on their kicker, because Gano has been absolute money. I think 35 on the trot now, which is very impressive. I just, despite the fact that I have real concerns around Jason Garrett, and everything that's going on, and we saw Kenny Galladay not being too pleased, the Giants will have enough in this one, because I think the Falcons they're really not at the races yet on either side of the ball. And with Saquon coming back and Jones able to use his feet, and with enough playmakers, the Giants will do enough. They get their first win, and the Falcons, unfortunately for them, move to 3-0 or 0-3.
Yeah, you have to wonder where the Falcons are in terms of becoming the most dysfunctional franchise in the league, because they've now lost 7 games in a row. They've given up 40 points on defense in both games so far this season. It just doesn't look any good. And we expected a bit of a bounce back with the new head coach going in. And for the Giants, I mean, we're 0-2, but the narrative would have been very different last week if that kick at the end that was missed wasn't called back for the flag, and we'd be 1-1, and we'd be 10 days away from potentially going 2-1. So I'm not going to get carried away by the fact we lost last week. Daniel Jones had a really efficient game last week, probably his best game of his career. 22 for 32, 249 yards, no interceptions, ran one in, scored one, had one pullback that was arguably, could have went either way. And it's a big day on Sunday, despite what you might not know, because at halftime, Eli Manning jersey is getting retired. There's a big ceremony for him. The last 2 times we've had that situation with Michael Strahan and Phil Simms, we've laid an egg and got beaten twice. So I'm really, really hoping that's not the case on Sunday, because if anybody deserves to see us win on Sunday, it's Eli, because it was first ever game for the Giants was in fact at home against the Falcons. So please God, come Sunday we'll win. And I honestly, genuinely, if I had to step away from my Giants hat, I do believe we're more than capable of winning this game. Giants to win.
I can't wait to watch this game, and particularly that ceremony at halftime when I get to relive multiple nightmares for myself and the entire New England Patriot fan base. But fair play to Eli Manning, and his exactly 500 winning record that he closed out with. Wasn't it 114 was his final record?
I also just think back at that game
it was
drive in Foxborough. Do you remember that one, Mark? And when he touched down the
banner? No, I remember, Brian. I remember. Don't worry.
I think I texted you that night, didn't I?
But this is very simple to me, guys. This is a soccer game, and it's really a story of the 2 quarterbacks and their 2 soccer players. Matt Ryan is Harry Kane. It's very simple. Matt Ryan is there racking up the yards year after year. It's just like Harry Kane bangs in the goals year after year after year. But at the end of the day, he plays for a team that is utterly pointless, meaningless, and will have nothing to say at the business end of a season. In fact, the one time they get in any way in a progression, like Tottenham made the Champions League final, they promptly throw it away and don't get to the promised land, just like the Falcons did. So Harry Kane equals Matt Ryan. Daniel Jones, however, is Theo Walcott. And Daniel Jones is Theo Walcott because Theo Walcott, during his career, had some amazing highlights. Theo Walcott scored his first goal for Arsenal in the Carabao Cup final, but he got overshadowed. Why? Because then Arsenal conceded 2 goals and lost the game. Theo Walcott had an amazing run to set up a goal in the quarterfinal.
Stephen Carr. What a game that was.
Yeah, it was an amazing game. But what happened? Arsenal conceded the goal at the other end, and they promptly lost the bloody game to Liverpool. Theo Walcott got a hat-trick for England in Croatia, and then promptly never made the squad for the Euros that year. Okay? Theo always got overshadowed by other events, and his highlights were ultimately buried in lowlights. Daniel Jones, unfortunately, so far in his career is the exact same. He makes an amazing 80-yard run and falls over, and we remember the low light at the end. He has his most efficient game in a long time, and only his 4th game he has never had a turnover in. And it was a really efficient game, Brian, but they lost the game in the end. Yeah. So until further notice, got the attributes, got the speed, looks the part, but would ultimately get overshadowed. And tomorrow, unfortunately, Theo Walcott didn't score as many goals as Harry Kane. And no, I can't go with the Falcons. The Giants will still win, but he's still Theo Walcott.
I'm getting worried.
Arsenal today.
I'm getting worried here. I was going to have to shut this laptop down.
Hey,
we know where this is going, don't we?
Look, if you look at it in a logistical manner, the Falcons didn't play well against the Eagles, but there was times in offense he looked half decent. Cal Pitts hasn't come into it yet. Matt Ryan needs to improve. They scored 25 points against the Super Bowl champions last week, and at 1 point last week could have got a lot closer to tie in the game. They played a lot better last week, albeit they were playing against a man or a machine or an immovable object in Tom Brady, who will never die. He's like got the Philosopher's Stone. And they improved last week. The Falcons now play the Giants today, Washington next week, and they play the Jets in London, and we're going to be there. I mean, that's a bye for the Falcons in week 5. I think if it clicks, they're the better team. I think if you get Cal Pitts into the game, if he gets a couple of receptions early on, I think they're the better team. I hope that all the Giants fans enjoyed the Eli Manning ceremony. I think that's fantastic. I, for one, was delighted when Eli Manning won the Super Bowl with the Giants twice against Tom Brady. But the reality is, I just don't think the talent's there to win this game today. I think the Falcons will come good in the second stretch of the season. I don't think it's as bad as we all think. And I'm picking the Falcons. I think Matt Ryan will have over 300 yards again this week. And I think that guys like Mike Davis and Calvin Ridley will get them over the line. And my favorite kicker outside of Brandon McManus, Young Ho Koo, will get them over the line. So I'm picking the Falcons, and I just think, it's not going to matter, but the Falcons will win the game.
And Michael, I think it was the Resurrection Stone, not the Philosopher's Stone, that gave everlasting life. Philosopher's Stone turns it into gold. But that's Harry Potter references.
In Harry Potter, if you have the Philosopher's Stone, you never die.
No, Philosopher's Stone turns base materials into gold and silver. The Resurrection Stone is what keeps people alive.
No, it's the Philosopher's Stone. It's called the Sorcerer's Stone in America.
No, that's true, but it still doesn't keep you alive.
Okay, well,
completely lost.
I don't know what they're on about. I heard him talking about some film that I've never even seen. Jesus Christ.
They do the movies in color now, Brian.
Yeah, I know. I watched Trading Places there recently.
The Bengals go into the Steelers today. Both teams 1-1 column. The Bengals let all of us down last week. Are you sticking with them this week, or do you think the Steelers get the win?
Well, I think last week, really expected more from the Bengals, but maybe they're looking back on kind of after week 1, and I think maybe a bit of arrogance from Burrow after that win against the Vikes. He kind of came in, kind of was like, oh, you all doubted Jamar Chase, and look what we can do. And it was like he had a safety blanket back, and he thought, great, this is going to be like college again. Only to throw 3 interceptions, get sacked 4 times, and get hit 9 times. They have, their issue with it is they can't keep him upright, right? 41% of pressures have resulted in sacks, which is the highest in the league. And all his sacks have come from the fact that he's he's held the ball for longer than 3 seconds. So he can't avoid pressure. He's holding the ball for too long. They've got to sort that out. He obviously has a lot of talent, but you can't just keep looking on the deep ball to Chase. For the Steelers, obviously they have a number of injuries. Does TJ play today? That's probably the biggest. If he does, I think the Steelers will win this. But Deontay Johnson is out, which is a big loss because the guy who couldn't catch last year doesn't drop this year. I did so much work in the off season. Najee Harris has struggled on the ground, did well catching passes, but neither of these teams are you'd say you could trust them. But I think given they're at home, the Steelers will just about have enough. But look, I've criticized Burrow there. I do think he's a very good QB. I do think him and Chase will do well together, but it won't be enough today.
Yeah, I took time out to watch this game back because a few friends are Bears fans, so I really wanted to see how they got on. And yeah, the Bears defense played very well in the second half, but it was very evident. And back to the point we made during the season preview show, they've completely bypassed the main problem, the main crux of this team, and that's the offensive line. They wanted Jamar Chase because of the LSU connection. Great, he scored a touchdown late on last week. That's 2 touchdowns in a row. But the reality is, Burrow was struggling because, as you said, he can't be held upright. I'm not sure if they're using the running game effectively because they've set a record going back to 1970 where they've actually thrown for over 38 throws in both games so far this season. So to me, that looks like there's not a right balance there in terms of trying to utilize the running game and stop Burrow having to continuously throw. I'm not convinced by the Steelers. Picked the Raiders last week. I haven't watched back the week 1 game against the Bills. The special teams and defense won the game. Big Ben didn't look right. Big Ben seems to be injured again. But the Bengals are 1-15 on the road. They're setting records for all the wrong reasons. I can't say it. I think Steelers will win. Not a game I'm going to be too carried away on, but I think the Steelers will just do enough to win.
Bram Stoker, good Irish lad, as you always know, were one of the greatest horror novels of all time in Dracula. And frankly, the best thing about Game Pass is you can actually go back to the coach's film. And I watched the coach's film of a couple of the Steelers games so far this season, and my God, Bram Stoker couldn't have written anything more scary than what you see from their offensive line. Brian rightly called it for week 2, but I actually didn't realize until I was watching this back just how bad almost every snap is. There's pressure on, and the Raiders, to me, aren't the greatest pass rush team, and we've covered already that they were reaching out to the Bears and saying, hey, do you want to do that Khalil Mack trade back by any chance? We'll be interested. So they are not the purple people eaters or anything like that across the defensive line. But, they couldn't pick up basic stunts. Pressure was getting through. Big Ben couldn't just take a simple 5 or 7 step drop without pressure coming from the edges or up the middle. They looked discombobulated. They couldn't get any movement in the run game. Genuinely, guys, I was gobsmacked at just how bad. Because watching TV, you're like, oh, that's not great. But actually seeing the coach's film on that different angle, you're like, this is appalling. So that's not getting fixed. Rome wasn't fixed in the day. That's definitely not getting fixed today. And arguably, they had a lot of these issues last year still when we said, hey, they're 11-0 based on a really short passing game getting out of Big Ben's hands quickly. But like that, the Bengals aren't exactly going to be the most dominant opponents they come up against last season. Of course, last year, they did beat the Steelers. They broke that 11-0 streak. They, in a surprise game, they kind of took the win against them in the week 12 or week 13, I think it was. But much as I love Joe Burrow, I just can't see it. I don't think the Bengals have enough to trouble them in that problematic offensive line. And God willing, TJ Watt plays, that Steelers defense is going to be what keeps them in the game and is probably what wins them the game. A bit like it kept them in the game against the Bills in week 1 and put so much pressure on to ultimately come through to fruition for them. So, yeah, it could be embarrassing, but I'm going Steelers in this game. But for the love of God, fix the O-line. We'll send super glue. We'll send, something to help you fix it and repair it.
Well, if Mac Jones is C3PO, Ben Roethlisberger is R2D2. We're coming to the end. I'm not the show, but Big Ben. And it's been a memorable career in many ways. But 23 points week 1, 17 points week 2. And I think the Bengals will have learned from their mistakes in week 2, boys. I think the Bengals will score over 25, 27 points in this game. And I think realistically that will be what wins this game for the Bengals. I think Deontay Johnson being out is a massive factor, regardless if TJ Watt plays there or not. And I think Joe Burrow will not only get the receptions to Jamar Chase today, but Joe Mixon will get the run game going as well. And for me, I just can't see how the Steelers will win this game unless they find another quarterback, or unless if Ben Roethlisberger takes 5-hour energy, or has anybody ever seen the movie Like Mike, where he wears the basketball shoes and he gets really good? You boys have kids, you know, right? Unless he finds a football equivalent of those shoes, I can't see it. I see the Bengals going 2-1. I'm going to take the Bengals.
Michael, I can't believe you didn't go Chewbacca on the Big Ben reference.
Oh dear God. Okay, right. Here they come, growling, mean and angry. Mean and angry, another team. The Carson Wentz experience in Indianapolis is getting better and better every week. 0-2 going up against the Tennessee Titans, who won last week. That game's in Tennessee. Colin, who have you got?
There are 4 players in NFL history who have more than 10 games, 150 yards rushing and 2 touchdowns. Jim Brown, Jadalian Tomlinson, Barry Sanders, and Derrick Henry. That is elite company, gentlemen. That is serious business in a league that is now so focused on the pass. When he gets up ahead of steam, he is almost unstoppable. We've talked about he is boom and bust, but he's more boom than bust. And he put the Titans on his back last week and just won them the game. For the Titans, realistically, this is like, how far can you go on the backs of Tannehill, Julio Jones, Brown, and Derrick Henry? Because they have certainly issues on the defensive side of things. I don't think the Colts are going to be good enough to take advantage of that, even though Wentz hung in there and made plays against the Rams. But my God, he had 2 knee injuries, 2 ankle injuries, and they're trying to rush him back to come out. I just think that the Titans will have too much offensively for the Colts, and it's obviously it's going to be a big issue for the Colts if they're sitting at 0-3.
Yeah, the Colts have only given up over 100 yards to one running back 3 years in a row. Every other game they've held running backs within 100 yards. Lo and behold, it's the same running back, Derrick Henry, 3 games in a row, 5 touchdowns in 4 games. He's 19-0 where he's been handed the ball 24 or more times. I mean, the game plan is simple. Give the ball to Derrick Henry. Let him do the thing. Let them close him down and then use the screen pass and go after the other guys. For me, it's Titans all day long. And I'm going to throw it out there now. It's only week 3, but it might seem a bit bizarre. But just bear in mind, the Colts have to give a first-round pick back to the Eagles if he plays 75%. If they lose on Sunday, they're 0-3. And you look at the schedule coming up, there's not many winnable games there. At what stage of the season, with the injuries he has, did he shut them down to protect themselves from having to give up that number 1 round pick? Just something for further down the line.
Oh, we thought they make a trade for the Chargers team doctor from last year, Brian. That's what's going to happen. Look, we've touched on Tim Tebow for some bizarre reason multiple times this evening, and the only man in the NFL that comes close to mirroring his level of faith in the moment is Ryan Tannehill, and that's because Ryan Tannehill worships daily the Holy Trinity, and that is AJ Brown, Julio Jones, and Derrick Henry across the board, and those Holy Trinity are going to carry these Tennessee Titans one way or the other. The defense is still frankly, their cornerbacks are, I don't want to say, but there's various expressions about being easier than things, but they're very easy. I'll just leave it at that and let your vivid imaginations do the rest. But they don't have a great defense still. That's been a flaw that held them back last season. They don't seem to have corrected this season. But Derrick Henry will drive them through this. And if he doesn't, AJ Brown and Julio Jones will be perfectly fine outlets for them against this Colts defense. Titans to walk it, Titans to establish themselves as the preeminent force in this division, as we all expected. It will be a divisional game, so it'll be a bit closer than we might imagine, but Titans.
Sorry, Michael, just a quick point. Last weekend, we were giving the accolades to Derrick Henry here. We gave it to him on Monday night, in terms of his performance in Seattle. But in the first half, Julio Jones came back to the wide receiver that we've seen over the years. He was really effective. He's overshadowed Antonio Brown, but the other AJ Brown in that game. And, already we're seeing, having been told off by Vrabel after his irresponsible play in week 1, how quickly he's rebounding. So I'd imagine he'll have a big game as well.
going to be a few religious moments now for the next minute or so with me. But in terms of the resurrection, it's the resurrection now of the Titans this week. They finally go to a positive record. Tennessee by 23. Derrick Henry's class. Do we need it? Like, maybe it'd be interesting to see. Julio Jones caught one last week and it was chalked off, wasn't it? Because he was just out of the end zone. He'll probably get his first score this week. And how fitting would it be to get it in Tennessee? Tennessee by 23. Let's move on to the main game of the week. We're going into the late window now. That game was the last 6 o'clock game. And it was talking about the resurrection this time for Aaron Yahar, Aaron Yahar, for Dan. Go Dahar Rate. Going on and Huller and Talu. I'm just going to say the Broncos are going to beat the Jets. I don't need to say why. The Jets are a work in progress, I guess. The Broncos are going to go to 3-0. Colin, who have you got in this game?
Most sacks allowed, league leaders in turnovers, 12-year-olds mocking you on TikTok and dissecting your plays and pointing out, was it the wide receiver? Was it the tight end? Was it the tackle? Was it the guard? Was it the center? Was it the quarterback? It was everybody. It was absolutely a disaster. And poor old Zach Wilson was awful against the Patriots. And it doesn't get any easier this week because he goes up and against another grizzled, defensive-minded coach who loves to make life difficult for rookies, and that is Vic Fangio. I would say that the Broncos, Chubb and Josie Jewell are out, but I would expect plenty of disguises to confuse Wilson. Teddy Bridgewater second in terms of completions. The Broncos will do enough, though there are concerns. Teddy's coming under pressure the whole time. That's not sustainable. Only Jameis and Zach Wilson have faced pressure more frequently. You can get away with that given the schedule that the Broncos have had. It was really good to see Courtland Sutton back last week. The Broncos moved to 3-0, we'll talk about next week. But yeah, the Jets, they've got problems everywhere on the field at the moment.
Brian, we're seeing the Jets in 2 weeks in London. You'll be there with me and the lads. Who did Man United buy from Tottenham in 1997?
Teddy Sheringham.
Oh, Teddy Bridgewater. No one's going to sing it. All right, sorry, go ahead, Brent.
Not really comparable. It's strange in the NFL when the weeks where a team gets, I wouldn't say they get embarrassed or annihilated, because I wouldn't say it was that extreme last week for the Jets, but we've seen in the past when they have a difficult road game the following week, people just assume they're going to have the same end result, and it doesn't turn out that way. And not saying they tend to win the games, but the game tends to be a little bit closer than first imagined. But the problem is, in that instance, it's usually another quarterback who's got a lot of experience in the league that goes and plays in that game and he keeps it close. But that's not the case here. You have Wilson going in to Denver. Denver's first home game in a year and a half where the crowd have been in. It's going to be bouncing. I don't think it's going to be a fantastic game. I don't think it's going to be annihilation or anything. I think it'll be a comfortable win for the Broncos. A steady Teddy, nice few drives, take time off the clock. 23-6, something along those lines. And you move on, and then next week the Ravens come into town, and that's when the season really starts.
Yeah, trap game. Clear trap game. No, it's not. It's not. Who do you have to pay around here to get the start to the season that the Broncos have had? Giants, Jags, Jets. Who do
you support? Robert Kraft, New England Patriots. Who do you have to pay around here? Okay.
Mark, the owners must have thrown in a few quid. Oh, wait, there's no owner.
They threw in a few quid to make sure that someone might come along and buy the Broncos now at 3-0. Because that's where I think they're going to be after this weekend. All I will say is, and for all the reasons the guys outlined, the Broncos should win this game. But all I will say is, really, your season, Denver Broncos fans, starts next week. And then you have Ravens, Steelers, Raiders, Browns, Washington, Cowboys for the next 6 games. So that really is when the NFL season properly starts, to be fair. But yes, absolutely got more than enough to handle the Jets, especially on the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah, and I guess we'll just move on to the next game. I was at the last Broncos home opener with fans when we played the Bears, and I paid 2,100 Great British pounds to watch the Bears win a field goal at the very end. The quarterback call on that day was Case Keenum, wasn't it? Yeah, I think so.
What are we going? When are we going
Joe,
back
it was
to?
Joe Flacco. It cost me
2019 was
€2,500.
Flacco. 2018 was Keenum.
I don't even know anymore. Anyway,
2017 was Trevor Simeon for the second year in a row.
Well, he wasn't good enough anyway. That's the point.
That's the point. I don't
tell
agree
you
with this
what,
one.
Mike, you'd have been praying for Mac Jones then.
Another team that could potentially be 3-0 in the AFC West come Sunday night. The Las Vegas Raiders are hosting the Miami Dolphins tonight. The game is at 9:05 our time. Colin, who have you got in this wonderful matchup tonight? Miami against Las Vegas.
Well, the Dolphins are without Tua. Jacoby Brissett is in, and that's just not a good thing. He is, he's not a starter. You just don't want to do it. He's been pressured on 34% of his dropbacks over the past 5 years, and as much as we were talking about, the Raiders not having a reputation for the pass rush, Max Crosby has been fantastic in the opening couple of weeks, and bringing in Ngakoue on the other side has really made a difference. Mark talked about the coaching film. I'm watching the pressure they brought against the Steelers, and each of them forced a fumble. That's what the Dolphins are going to have to deal with. The Dolphins just have not got anything going on offense in the opening couple of games. Brian mentioned it earlier that the Raiders haven't gone 3-0 since 2002 when they made the Super Bowl, which they went against their current head coach in the Buccaneers. They should go 3-0. I think that the pressure is on the Raiders, but that will probably mean that they will have two games ahead of either the Chiefs or the Chargers come the end of tonight.
We did our season preview show. I picked them to go to the playoffs. I picked it against you when they played the Ravens. I picked it against you last week when they played the Steelers. If you're asking me tomorrow who the Giants should go out and get as quarterback if it wasn't for Daniel Jones, Derek Carr, absolutely every day. 817 yards after 2 games, set the franchise record already. For me, the problem is you go to Vegas for 3 nights. The first night is fantastic. The second night is great. The third night, all you want to do is get home. And that's the Raiders for me. They always find ways to mess it up just when you think they're going to go 3-0. And the one thing we've seen so far, they still can't stop the run game. And last year, there was 27 touchdowns given up. So for me, are the Raiders going to win? Yes, they are. 3-0, baby. They're Raiders.
Yeah, but isn't it Beethoven's Unfinished Symphony the 9th? So the Raiders are the eternal 9th symphony. They start great, they look great, everything looks fantastic, but then, you die in the middle and you don't actually get it finished. And unfortunately, they're still coached by John Gruden, and he won't die in the middle, but his capability to coach a team may well do. 5-7 at the end last year, they lost. I'm expecting them to fall off a cliff. They're not going to fall off a cliff in week 3 of the season, though. And they go in a very fortunate method against the Tua-less Dolphins, who are searching for that identity a bit. The Patriots lost to them on the opening day is looking worse and worse in retrospect, and the Bills comfortably handled them. The Raiders, as long as they keep I keep saying that we keep talking about trap games. This is one where the Raiders worry me more. They could take their eye off the ball, but in all honesty, they should have more than enough. Ngakoue, rightly called out by Colin there, and Max Crosby having a great start to the season, and they need it from that position. So Raiders for me, offense and good old steady Eddie. Derek Carr has been performing very nicely for them as well.
I was going to say steady Teddy for a second there. Look, I could do with the Raiders not winning this game for obvious reasons, but they will win this game, and they'll win this game comfortably. The Raiders played very well against the Steelers last week, albeit with Ben Roethlisberger's situation. But even in week 1, putting that many points up on the board, it'll be interesting to see how far they can go down the stretch. I think both the Raiders and the Broncos will give the Chargers and the Chiefs a run for their money in the West this season. I think it's the best division in football by a long shot. And fair play to the Raiders. They've moved to Vegas. They've bided their time in terms of getting fans into that stadium. And I have to say that introduction with Steve Aoki and Bruce Buffer, it's time on Monday Night Football was wonderful to watch. But the main show itself is not Derek Carr. It's guys like Darren Waller looks great, like really, really good. And also, I think the defense could come up big here against the Dolphins today. The Raiders are going to go 3-0. And it matters. The 6 o'clock game with the Chiefs and the Chargers is a massive game. So we're early in the season, because if that does happen, they go 3-0. One of those teams looking up very quickly, and it could play a massive role down the stretch. And let's see what happens. Okay, we have the Bucs going to SoFi Stadium, hopefully for the last time this season. Some people are probably thinking, not me. I don't care, because I present a show where we talk about all the teams. But Bucs, Rams, we're in Belfast tonight. This game will be on in Belfast. Calling the games on Sky Sports as well. What's your thoughts? Tom Brady looking unbelievable. Matthew Stafford looking rejuvenated, refreshed. How do you feel ahead of this matchup?
Yeah, it should be a fascinating one. To see Brady do at 44 to looking better than he did in his 20s and 30s it is almost unbelievable. But the Bucs have won 10 straight games. If you go back to last season, 9 consecutive games scoring at least 30 points. But now they face a Rams team, obviously with Ramsey and Aaron Donald. Very interested to see Aaron Donald obviously carrying an injury in the postseason last year. I'm interested to see how that will go. You never know whether, when teams meet like this, and they're very likely to meet in the postseason, do you hold a little bit back, or do you really go for it? I know, Mark, you're shaking your head, but I remember Andy Reid a few years ago brought out a trick play against the Broncos that to go for a 2-point conversion in a nothing game, just because he wanted to put a beat down on him. And they got it the postseason. They really could have done with a trick play that hadn't been seen. So that's the thing. I just wonder. But look, Antonio Brown seems to be out due to COVID. It's unlikely that he's going to pass enough to get through. But JPP is out as well, which could have an impact in terms of the Bucs getting pressure. Now we really get to see Stafford. This is what they brought Stafford in for. This sort of game. This is where they felt that Goff wasn't able to take them over the hump. It's going to be to see how Cooper Kupp does. There's lots to look forward to. Ramsey against Gronk, obviously, as well. Gronk was having the time of his life with the Manning brothers the other night, and half the stuff I don't take seriously, that he doesn't do any study, and he just goes out there and he asks Tom what he's got. Yeah, just look, Gronk is a ridiculously good player, and he doesn't need to practice in the red zone. Maybe that part is true, because he is ridiculous. I think this is going to be a fascinating game. I think it could go either way, but you don't back against Tom Brady. The Bucs are winning this one for me.
Colin, you touched on how explosive their offense has been, and Brady has thrown 2 touchdowns in 13 games in a row. But on the flip side, no quarterback has thrown over two touchdowns on this Rams defense for 6 games. Not comparable in terms of the games, but again, I suppose it's just key to the strengths this Rams defense has. And you're right. For me, this game is all about Matthew Stafford. It's not about the Bucs. We've seen the Bucs being explosive in 2 games so far, against the Cowboys, against the Falcons. This is what Matthew Stafford was brought in for. Goff couldn't win these games. He couldn't go in and beat Green Bay. He couldn't beat the Patriots in the Super Bowl. This is what Stafford's here for: win these games. He has a terrible record against teams that have had winning records. 8 wins out of 73 games. But at the same time, That was with the Lions. It's not just all about the quarterback. It's about the rounded team. I'm going to go with the Rams. I think they need to win this more so than the Bucs. The Bucs will rebound. The Bucs will be in the playoffs. The Rams will be in all likelihood, but they're in a more competitive division. They need to win this, if anything, to get a marker on that home field advantage, which will be crucial come January. So for me, high scoring game, probably go down to the death. The Rams just nick it, but again, it's a toss-up.
Yeah, I was trying to find that Matthew Stafford stat earlier on, wasn't it? 8-67 or something like that?
8-65, Mark.
8-65. Like it is just unbelievable, really, when you think about it. Look, I don't want to overlook some of the obvious storylines here. Like, I mean, the Rams beat the Bucs in Tampa last season, and we alluded to it as like, hey, there was that 3-game stretch where they lost 3 on the bounce, and they were handled in some of those games as well, especially the Saints game. Cooper Kupp last year went off on 11 receptions for 145 yards. He's still there, along with other weapons, and as we say, potentially a better quarterback to get him the ball at the right time. You know, when you go through the injuries that the column is listing there as well, with Jason Pierre-Paul out, with Antonio Brown out, and Brady has suddenly looked for Antonio Brown quite a lot in the opening couple of games this season. It feels like it is primed for a Rams statement game to make the case. But I made an error I have rarely made in my life last season when we were talking about the NFC Championship game, and I bet against Tom Brady in a primetime game. I'm not going to make that mistake again. It should be the Rams. It looks like the Rams. It feels like the Rams, but sod it. Tom Brady and the Bucs to win.
Of course, you picked Brady and the Bucs to win, of course. I think Murphy Bunting not playing for a stretch down the season is going to have a big factor for this team. But this is a preview of the NFC Championship game. There is no doubt about it. These are the 2 best teams in the NFC. As it stands, in my opinion, by a country mile. Matthew Stafford looks like the born-again son. He looks unbelievable. But more so, and I said it on Monday night, Cooper Kupp is the X factor for this team, and I really love the run game with Henderson. I think it'll be close. I think, honestly, it's got all the makings, and I sound like bootlegger here. It's got all the makings of a classic underneath the floodlights. This game could be a high-scoring game, but I think mistakes will be key in the game. I think Brady will throw a couple of picks, like he did in week 1, and I think Brady will, as Brian said, will lose this game. But he'll be back. He doesn't need to win this game. His division's a joke. He could finish. They can win the division and go in 4th in the playoffs, and he'll still somehow manage to get his way into SoFi Stadium, either by a ticket entrance or by a player bus in February. But I'm going to take the Rams to win this. I think it'll be an interesting game. I can't wait to see this Rams defense go up against Brady and finally, hopefully, give him a running for his money. Everyone happy with that? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Right. Well, that was interesting. Okay. That game is not Sunday Night Football. We've got another game to go before we talk about Matchbook and then Sunday Night Football. Hold in there, Mark. We're almost there, my man. Seahawks, Vikings. Seahawks 1-1. Vikings 0-2. Vikings missed a field goal to beat the Cardinals last week. Sweet mother of Jesus. Colin, what's your thoughts on this game?
Back-to-back heartbreakers for the Vikings because of field goals, but look, that's their history. Shout out to the in-laws in Minnesota. They'll tell you that this is the history of that franchise. Now, a weird quirk of a stat that I saw during the week was in terms of QB rating. Kirk Cousins is currently on the second longest active streak of a rating over 16 games. Peyton Manning, the only one above him, had 23 with Denver, had 15 with the Colts, and Steve Young had 15 with the 49ers. So he's in, pretty prestigious companies amongst those Hall of Famers, but it just hasn't worked. And that's one where I think stats don't tell the full story. Russell Wilson has been brilliant, obviously, so far. The Seahawks defense gives them heart palpitations, I imagine, if you're Pete Carroll, but if you're Mike Zimmer, you're looking at the Vikings. Wilson is 7-0 against the Vikings. Pete Carroll hasn't lost to the Vikings since November 2nd, 1997. What do you know what he was doing at that point, Mark?
He was the head coach of the New England Patriots.
He was indeed. Yes, that was the last time he lost to the Vikings. He's 8-1 overall against the Vikings. I think the Seahawks will probably do enough, just because I think the Vikings are so poor defensively. We've talked about the issues that they had, but I think it'll probably be another close one.
Yeah, the Seahawks have put up over 400 yards offense in both games so far, and the Vikings defense has given up over 400 yards in both games. It's a recipe for disaster. And to your point, this team for Wilson is his most successful team in his career. He always beats the Vikings. So it's the Vikings' first home game. You might see a bit of a rebound, high-scoring game, but I think Seattle will come out the right end of it. And I think we're going to see that with Seattle for a lot of games this year. Neck and neck, down to the wire. Some they'll win, some they'll lose. High-scoring game, Seattle. But I think it'll be very close.
I hate the Vikings when it comes to trying to pick them. I really do, because every time I go for them, they let me down. Every time I go against them, they suddenly spring a performance out of nowhere. But having seen that Seattle defense be so susceptible last week to the Titans, albeit it was the Titans and it was the Derrick Henry, it makes me think it is the opportune scenario for Dalvin Cook to get his running legs back underneath him. And with the fact that they started to click a little bit more and realized that they also have Adam Thielen and Justin Jefferson in the team, out of sheer terror and fear, the Minnesota Vikings are going to get their run game going, will hold the Seahawks at bay, and will get their first win of the season. But don't expect me to feel comfortable about it. That's all I'll say.
I said in Brian's hidden bunker in North Dublin that I think the Seahawks will miss the playoffs. I think they will. I think they've got some great talent. Russell Wilson, Tyler Lockett, Chris Carson, to name a few before you can go into defense. But it won't be enough to beat the Minnesota Vikings, who need a win. They need a win. Mike Zimmer needs a win. Kirk Cousins needs a win. Dalvin Cook needs a win. Adam Thielen on my fantasy team needs a win. I think it'll be a close game, but I think the offense for the Vikings will see it out, and I think Dalvin Cook will get 2 rushing touchdowns. I think he'll go over 150 yards rushing on the day. I think it'll be close. I think Tyler Lockett will get a couple of scores. He could finish the season as the number 1 wide receiver in the league as it stands, but I just think the Vikings will have too much for the Seahawks. I'm picking the Vikings, boys. I think the Vikings are going to make a run at this division eventually, and I'm sticking by what I said in Brian's gaff. Okay, before we look at Sunday Night Football, we need to look at our partners, Matchbook Betting Exchange. Great NFL betting exchange. And folks, you can use the code Irish NFL Show to get a bonus either in Euro or GBP, Sterling in the North. Brian, what's on the agenda this week in terms of bets? We got a good bet up last week, didn't we?
We got a good bet up last weekend. We also got a good bet up on Thursday night because we were confident in the Panthers and we went on the -8. So that came up for us as well. So we're doing very well with matchbook.com since they were very charitable with their donations to our new account. This weekend, we're pushing it out. We've gone from 3 teams to 4 teams, and these are the 4. I think we're all in lockstep. So we all agree the Raiders are going to beat the Dolphins. I think it's a given that the Broncos are going to win against the Jets. We believe the Cards are going to beat the Jags. And we're all very confident about on the Ravens going into Detroit and beating the Lions. So that's the 4 teams: the Raiders, the Broncos, the Cards, and the Ravens. And I think you're going to look around 9-4, 5-2, and money line only, no handicaps. Take the 4 to win. You should be, all things going well, be up a few quid come Monday morning. Hopefully we will as well. And it'll go towards our nice trip to London in a couple of weeks.
And if you're not, find Brian's house in North Dublin, bang the door down and shout Matchbook for a chance to get your money back. I'm obviously joking, but code Irish NFL Show gets you a bonus. Feel free to use it. And thanks to everyone who used it last week. And Mark, are you happy with that bet?
Yeah, I'm delirious with that bet, Michael. I mean, you haven't included the Saints, so I'm happy enough, you know.
Happy enough. And Colin, the Broncos are in that bet, so you must be a happy one.
Yeah, well, This week, I think we can be confident.
Well, apparently it's only going to be 23-6, so let's not bet on that at least. But if you're going to put a bet on, feel free to check out Matchbook Betting Exchange, available in ROI and NI as well. Maybe we can have a bit of crack together in Belfast tonight and chat about it. Code Irish NFL shall get you a bonus. 18 plus, gamble aware. Please only bet what you can afford. Okay, Sunday Night Football. Waiting all day for Sunday night. This is a game in my profession, it's hard to stay up, but boys, what a game this could be. The Packers, the 49ers. I mean, lads. Oof, 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 oof. Did everybody see the video of Aaron Rodgers the other night with a Mexican guy? The tequila and stuff. I didn't expect that to blow up on my social media, but that was very good value. Colin, will the Green Bay Aaron Jones win, or will it be the 49ers?
The Packers' issue is their defensive coordinator, because they decided to bring Joe Barry in, who sounds like a lad from Cork. But I think that probably the fullbacks coach for the Cork senior hurling team would do a better job. Joe Barry coordinated 4 defenses. They finished 32nd, 28, and 28 in defensive DVOA. Packers are currently 29th. So he is on form, you would have to say, doing what he does, and I think that's a serious issue. I saw Mina Kimes had a tweet that said that the Packers defense is allowing 9.2 yards on runs outside the tackles. It's Trey Lance time, and I would absolutely encourage that. This is the time for the Trey Lance package. Bring it in, and I think have at the Packers. Look, with Aaron Rodgers there, you're always in with a chance. He was throwing absolute dimes the other day. Green Bay did win in San Francisco last year, but that was an injury. Absolutely ravaged 49ers team. They have injuries this year, but I think they're much stronger. I think they will have enough to win this and to move to 3-0 under Kyle Shanahan.
Colin, just in honor of Belfast tonight, you've got a bloody nerve, fella, like Ted Hastings said, mother of God, the whole Trey Lance thing. But Joe Barry, can you get him on the show? It sounds like a good lad from Cork. Get him on.
Yeah, well, I think he'll probably give it another 20 or so weeks, and I'd say he'll have a lot of free time on his hands, Michael.
Rodgers is 5-6 against the 49ers in the regular season. However, in the playoffs, he's 0-3. And when I think of the playoffs, I think back to that championship game 2 years ago, where the 49ers offense ran all over that Packers defense. They made it. If the game was over by the mid-second quarter. But the 49ers have no run game now. They literally are blitzing. They've gone. They've removed everybody. They have a guy called Nasty Hasty playing running back for them now. And they're going to have to be nasty to put a running game up. And I know there's a contender on the defense. The reality is now for me, Trey Lance will have to be used because there is no run game. For me, this is going to come up against Rodgers, against Jimmy G in a shootout. And who do I pick in a shootout in that instance? Rodgers. They're not the favourites. So is it a shock? I don't see it as a shock because I don't think the 49ers have set the world alight in the opening 2 games in their wins against the Lions and their win against the Eagles last week, where it was a tight game and it could have went either way. For me, the Packers will win, and I don't see this being a shootout. I think it'll be quite comfortable in the end.
Just quickly on Jimmy G, his first half performance last week against the Eagles was why you do give up the farm to trade up to take a quarterback, because that was awful.
And with no run game, he's going to have to go up against Rodgers and literally go blow for blow, drive for drive, potentially, if Rodgers gets his mojo going and they start scoring touchdowns. We'll see.
Just another example of a quarterback, Mark, that was proved to be the second coming by Bill Belichick at one point, but that's another conversation.
I don't think he was. I think he was picked and then Tom Brady still won his job and won a few more Super Bowls, Michael. You know, I know it's a while since you've seen what a Super Bowl looks like, so don't worry about it. But still, yes, the 49ers are without their top 4 running backs, which is a slight problem given a run-dominant team. But look, if you're a Packers fan, do the 49ers not occupy a secret part of your nightmares? I mean, Kaepernick clips will be going on to beat the band. Obviously, Brian's alluded to the game 2 years ago as well. There were 3 big, horrible playoff losses in the last 10 years, all of which under the Aaron Rodgers campaign. But of course, now it was Don Capers' fault, or it was someone else's fault, or it's always everyone else's fault but Aaron Rodgers, who never put up points in the first half of any of those games. But let's not talk about that, of course. Anyway, you're mentioning Joe Barry. I don't know. When you say Joe Barry, I think of John Barry, Commodore John Barry, who was the founder of the American Navy. Actually, John Paul Jones, not the Led Zeppelin bassist, also has that title, the founder of the American Navy. And it's kind of almost like a ship analogy here. Both sides are just looking for the killer blow to land in the magazine to blow up the battleship of the other. The clear one on the 49ers is they might not be able to run the ball and have an effective offense in certain circumstances. But on the Packers, there is a fundamental weakness. Elton Jenkins is not looking likely to play. Obviously, he's still questionable at the moment. And if he isn't on an already dodgy line, as we saw in week 1 against the Saints in particular, Nick Bosa and team could be looking to cause some serious pain to Mr. Rodgers and that Green Bay offense. Green Bay got the gang back together and things back on track, though, last week. And for me, they'll have just enough to host off an ineffective 49ers offense, and I'll go with the Pack this week.
You say Green Bay got the gang back together. They were playing the Detroit Lions in Lambeau Field, and Aaron Rodgers relied on one player. Are you serious?
It was better than it was the week before, Michael.
It was better than it was the week before, but they can't do that for 17 weeks. They can't. And this is why I think it's going to be very interesting to see what sort of Aaron Rodgers we get, because he's walking around after the game last week, not a care in the world, talking about tequila. Aaron Jones was great.
That's probably because he threw 4 touchdowns in the game.
Well, I'll tell you what. I didn't
realize he had to throw him. He wasn't allowed to throw him to the same player in the game.
Well, what sort of throws were they? Were they short?
What about the 65-yard bomb to Adams? Boom.
They were successful throws.
I just don't get. I don't get the whole Jimmy G talk here, lads. I don't get the Jimmy. I understand there's not much of a run game there. Slant in Trey Lance for the crack. Why not? Here, Trey. Here you go, Pat. Hand it off. George Kittle's there. Jimmy Garoppolo has never lost a game as a starting quarterback on Sunday Night Football. 1,070 passing yards, 6 touchdowns, no interceptions, 122.8 passer rating, 4-0 record. Nick Bosa is going to be a massive factor in this. I'm taking the 49ers, boys, going 3-0. Sorry. Any final points?
I think it's a case of there's so many games that look so one-sided, and then you get 4 or 5 games that are literally a toss-up. This game, the Bucs, Rams, there's a few other ones in there, but there's also some games this weekend where you could see the score has been very kind of, let's just say, by the end of the third quarter, some comfortable wins for other teams, which I think is consistent with our picks and a lot of them.
Absolutely. And also, we are in Belfast tonight from 5:30, as Ted Hastings says. Now we're sucking diesel. These boys are going to have to convert their euros into sterling and get up here and taste what some people would argue is better tasting Tito in certain varieties, and ice cold harp on top. And we're looking forward to seeing all of you in Belfast tonight. And feel free, if you're in Cork, if you're in Donegal, or even if you're sitting outside Belfast, come on up, join us at the Deer's Head from 5:30, and we will be recording from Navan next week. He's had to take me down to Navan after the beat Tyrone in the All-Ireland minor final, but sure, look, it'll be good fun. Looking forward to that next week. And lads, thanks a million. Hope everybody enjoys week 3 today. Thanks to Trust, thanks to Matchbook, and enjoy week 3 of the season. The season's flying, and we'll see you again live tomorrow night for MNFIRE.